Everybody, it's start time. So.
Yeah, I think Matt went to the bathroom.
I just sent the 1AC. There's a trigger warning at the top, so please make sure to read that before scrolling down to that.
Oh, I'm gonna call Matt to see if he can come. Okay, he's on his way. Okay, he's trying to join the Zoom. It's taking a sec. Okay, I have to. Okay, it's working. Sorry.
You're good. Is anybody not ready? Okay. The advantage is transphobic violence. Transgender prisoners are assaulted at 13 times the rate of other prisoners, but they struggle to seek legal redress due to the explicit exclusion of transsexualism in legal protections. Burns 18. There are women in the prison system has men assaulted. Women have little recourse to shop UVs. 21% of all trans women have incarcerated. Jones says 47% for black trans women. Issue of where to house trans women is extremely critical. The major issue with making legal challenges that transsexualism is for protection. Change legislature was from male girls forced to shower. That means it's often the abuse by the guards that dismissed her. She was eventually sent to an all-male center where trans identity meant solitary confinement. They locked me away for 90 days by myself. And the impact of cycles of violence and discrimination in the CGS, Psalm 16. 1 in 6 transgender Americans and 1 in 2 black transgender people have been in prison. Transgender prison is part of a larger pattern of violence that disproportionately affects POC, transgender, gender non-conforming people. Transgender people are 13 times more likely to be sexually assaulted. Prison officials block access to tradition-related healthcare even when it's medically necessary. And transgender prisoners face a double punishment through reinforcement of the gender binary, making them susceptible to ongoing violence and psychological abuse. Patrickson 20. Aspects of incarceration amplify pre-existing vulnerabilities with high risk of depression, suicide, harassment, unemployment. Transgender people face disproportionate levels of vulnerability and sacrifice. They face high levels of stigmatization and victimization. Hypergender signifies the concepts of masculinity and femininity are reinforced through norms of prison. Double punishment is enacted on transgender people by making their bodies hyper-visible and more susceptible to violence. And the plan solves new sentencing guidelines, ensure adequate legal protections while also mitigating transphobic jury bias. Clock 18. Congress has restricted judicial consideration of personal characteristics, has resulted in sentence determinations without authority to enter factors that increase disparities. Disparities will continue to exist until actors of sentencing are allowed to consider forbidden factors without authority to rely on rehabilitative model. Actors of sentencing cannot consider the deleterious effects of prison on transgender defendants, if then actors had more discretion, it would be possible to vary from the guidelines for populations particularly vulnerable. Giving trial judges limited discretion would eliminate concerns about over-sentencing on the basis of transphobic ads and current federal sentencing excuse consideration of gender identity. Senate Congress directed the Sentencing Commission to make sure that personal characteristics would never be used. The result increased the severity of overall sentences, valuing unique life situations makes it difficult to empathize, and specifically, the act would shift discretion away from correction facilities that use patriarchal stereotypes to justify violent sentencing procedures. TOC 18. Courts consistently defer to correction decisions to determine housing for transgender inmates. Double deference results in unbridled discretion to place inmates literally wherever, with the test of sex depending on procedures. Many trans people cannot afford to do not want. Many trans people are sent to facilities that do not match their gender. It leads to violence, isolation, and detrimental outcomes. Facilities don't want to make the decision or women feel uncomfortable. Seems that trans women are deceptive and placed on patriarchal notions of protecting white femininity. Also deliberately ignores the plight of trans women who constantly experience sexual assault, paternalistic notion of ignoring actual core sex and men's prison facilities. Charges should make these individualized because they are much more visible and less partisan than correction facilities. Correction institutions have so much discretion that protective custody protections are toothless. And recent revision of the Civil Rights Act thumbs links, Wittenberg 20. Supreme Court ruled you can't legally fire someone because they're gay or transgender. SCOTUS actively reading the Civil Rights Act with many similar access of these SCOTUS ruling protections across the country have been universalized. Trans gay people are now properly included. And the plan is not political. Westbrook 07. Sentencing commissions turned out to be a good idea. Consensus reflected bipartisan political commitments, even in states known for harsh criminal laws. One of us on the notion that achieve efficiency and avoid excessive incarceration and police and with lawmakers with their cost and benefits. Drivers of this consensus include leaders viewed above the political fray, and it's also bipartisan. KFF 20. Large majorities of Americans think it should be illegal for employers to discriminate against people because they are transgender. Includes Republicans, Independents, Democrats. 9 in 10 say it should be illegal to refuse to treat someone because they're transgender. 7 in 10 will say they support laws that ban discrimination based on whether a person is transgender. And transgender scholarship has historically been excluded from academia, especially in the realm of criminal justice. The plan is necessary to directly educate students about the harms transgender inmates face in the CGS. Walker et al. 38. Academia can be a welcome domain for trans people. No scholarship specifically to such trans scholars in the field of criminal justice. Such scholarship is necessary. Trans scholars teach students who have careers in the CGS programs have most strongly anti-LGBT students of any social science discipline. Students who have law enforcement and impact trans individuals. Trans interaction lesson and scholarship could determine how these students interact with trans people whose lives are disproportionately affected by the criminal process system. Trans academics experience are seldom heard. Thus, the plan. The United States federal government should enact substantial criminal justice reform through creating new sentencing guidelines in cases involving transgender prisoners, including at least limited discretion by actors at sentencing, case-by-case consideration of personal characteristics, and deference to the rehabilitative model. Next is framing. Extinction discourse is patriarchal and violent. The judge should endorse feminist critiques that rethink dominant frames of extinction. Mitchell 15. Feminism, queer theory, and studies of extinction are connected in multiple ways. Feminist critiques have a role to play in rethink dominant frames of extinction. Takes form deliberate strategies for enforcing existence, monitor, enforce reproduction. Female is reduced to a reproductive function. Enforce survival can disproportionately burden female organism by calculating survival, sexual reproduction, source of extinction, embed heteronormative frameworks. This may enact severe cultural constraints on women's agency in the face of extinction. Result of poorly constrained female subjectivity, crying out for the discipline of males, images drawn dominant Western gender stereotypes, and our impact outweighs on probability and magnitude. Risk assessment is epistemologically biased towards white masculine elites who discount the severity of everyday localized violence. Vercheck 96. Language of risk assessment serves to pass social consideration. Policymakers should look at all perspectives, especially those societies most vulnerable. National survey measure risk perception research and conducted regression analysis. Even after all corrections, gender based on white male status remain highly significant. Politicians, the large majority of whom are white men, crafted a system of protection bias towards their understanding. People of color have less power to control. Women are more complacent about public risk because they control institutions. Catastrophes to be policymakers about dramatic but statistically less threatening hazards, while accepting more harmful but mundane hazards. Localized hazards tend to be unevenly distributed on basis of race and income. And sexual violence happens on a continuum. Focus on systemic impacts is key, since patriarchal war making causes endless violence. Chevron 9. The war peace dichotomy is gender misleading and pathological. Feminist security says to offer an important corrective foundational assumptions of higher with perpetuate violence. If we take seriously lives of women as well as on the ground workings of masculinity and femininity, we will produce reliable analysis of security. Women's violence in global politics has rendered unintelligible, extending the concept of violence allows us to take seriously the violence of everyday life, leaving words of pure waste diverted attention from the myriad violence and a form of reinforced social behavior. And prefer a view of war on a continuum. Gender violence is intricately intertwined with war. Best social science data votes Act. Article 14. Quantitative studies show correlation between domestic gender equality and intensity towards all conflicts. Finally, gender inequality is a significant predictor of conflict that outweighs democracy. Fighting patriarchies and imperative to overcome war. Everyday violence operates on a continuum with military violence. Governing ideologies are systemically intertwined, and extinction rhetoric necessarily privileges normative bodies. Utilitarian scholarship begs the question of what life is worth living, which is historically based on exclusion of disabled and vulnerable bodies. Colbert 14. Utilitarianism will necessarily harm punch the extinction decision will lead to a rather than worth life extreme position that utilitarianism is going to bring to the fore. Personhood and a life worth living is to realize the distinction between what counts as utility. The question of who and what survives will be imposed upon its utilitarian approaches of combative, violent, concrete, the very notion based on the exclusion of those with lesser capacities. To ask about lives worth living is necessarily valuing the worth of some lives over others, and thereby waging violence against force. Why problem of capacity and execution has determined the human lives that are deemed to be worth living. Those who assume the human species have a right to survive are expressing a broader logic of the highly normative conception of human flourishing. Specifically, existential risk reduction only focuses on minimizing loss of intelligent and rational life. Obsession with preserving future generations precludes focusing on local catastrophes. Quote book 14. For Bostrom, it is obvious that the loss of intellectual life before we losing many humans. Bostrom calculates that Mr. Roberts ought to be directed at minimizing the risk of the loss of intelligence far greater priority than reducing local catastrophes such as genocidal losses. For Bostrom, there's a value placed on human rationality. Relevant figures how many descendants we could have if utilitarian and delicious thus calculations of who ought to live and expand the conceptual say the very possibility of asking that question necessarily just towards calculus and pushes us the question of how one ought to live and reject high magnitude impacts which push minority bodies to the back, give a new sense of urgency to these bodies as a radical critique of the waiting politics of the negative which serves to make suffering infinite by continually delaying the act. Wilson 15. The bodies that at odds with the larger scale other concerns, especially forecast of suffering in the presence of large scale future emergency, the urgency, the spirit, the state, the economy, concerns, scales, response bodies that are currently suffering cannot be urgent because they are excluded from the potential collectivity that could be suffering every the urgency the body provides justifications for social inclusion, the mismarginalized space rating is more ethically ambivalent. Waiting can demobilize reform, depoliticizing the instruction politics of the present instance of infinite waiting to lead not only to depolitization but also a disbelief in the possibility of a future self-waiting can function as potentially important spatial technology and powerful and internal links or fallacy can edit an ideate. Scenarios gain more credibility and they serve even far-fetched scenarios comprise links which seem plausible against likelihood dwindles because you have impressionist possibilities, not just offer selective view that distort risk concerning Hawks with a horde that passed on zero. They establish an impossible standard and extinction first equates to Pascal's wager. Infinite scenarios cause policy failure. Month 15. Existentialist strike me as shallow. This is known as Pascal's wager. It's a rational pedagogue no matter what. Probability existentialist perhaps a similar logic, arguing where there seems to be innumerable scenarios, innumerable work that mitigate these, and it is likely we have resources to bet on them all unless we spread them so thin that it becomes meaningless. Argument ignores likelihood resources will be wasted and cost not using better strategies, not worth any consideration in light of massive states are impressed by the state of existentialist. You should be impressed with Pascal's wager. I'm open for cross text.
Okay, what's the rehabilitative model mean?
The Kulak evidence says that when a transgender defendant goes in front of a trial judge, they should consider rehabilitation as opposed to like a strict traditional sentence.
Yeah, I just want to know what like that means. Like, is that a legal term of art, or is that just like a thing that your evidence talks about? Like, what does that process look like?
The plan more broadly gives trial judges more discretion, so we think that what the rehabilitative model looks like would obviously vary from case to case.
Oh, so it's decided by the judge?
What?
So it's decided by the judge?
Sentences are decided by the judge, yes.
I mean, but like usually there are guidelines to determine what punishments fit.
Yeah, the plan changes the federal sentencing guidelines
let me finish
to
your question.
encourage trial judges to choose rehabilitation as opposed to like
do you create guidelines for what is rehabilitation, or you just like say
no.
Okay, sure, that's fine. I'm getting an echo. Is anyone else?
No.
Okay, it's fine. The limited discretion part of the plan, what evidence says that judges will use this discretion in a way that is beneficial for transgender people?
I guess there's a few answers to that question. The first one is that the federal sentencing guidelines have the force of law and an anchoring effect for trial judges, which means that if they're required to consider personal testimony of transgender defendants and their lived experiences, they have to default towards integrating that into their sentences. And then the Kulak evidence is also very specific on how providing slightly more discretion allows trial judges to consider what Congress refers to as forbidden factors, which is the personal and lived experience of transgender defendants.
Both of those answers, my question isn't so much how the plan gives them the authority. My question is what evidence says they will use that authority beneficially, but that's fine. The first part of the answer was like that you create, like they're enforced. How are sentencing guidelines enforced? What if judges circumvent it?
I'm sort of confused about what your question is getting at, but the part of the text that says
we're going to read cards that say judges like to do whatever they want. What is your answer? Like, how do you ensure that judges take into account the transgender people's like not testimony, but like their
I think both pieces of Kulak evidence indicate that the federal sentencing guidelines are broadly followed by judges in the context of cases involving transgender prisoners. If they follow them in the status quo, they're likely to follow them post-aff, and they're also binding. They have the force of law, which means they legally cannot circumvent.
After like Booker versus US, aren't federal sentencing? After Booker versus US in 2006, sentencing guidelines are not mandatory. That's like not true.
We'll read evidence that postdates that, where SCOTUS judges conclude that they have an anchoring effect. So even if they're not like the law, they have the force of law, which is fundamentally the same thing.
I'll send out the one and see. It's 9 for now.
And then is there an order to case things?
Case information.
The 9 for now. Okay.
It is. Okay, it's sent.
Sorry, my word's really laggy. Is anyone not good?
What's the order on case?
I think it was advantage framing. Yeah, advantage framing. Okay, is anyone else not good? Stop me if you aren't. Great, I'm gonna start then. The United States federal government ought to propose substantial criminal justice reform through creating new sentencing guidelines in cases involving transgender prisoners, including at least limited discretion by actors as sentencing case-by-case consideration of personal characters and deference to the rehabilitative model to a benevolence-coded artificial intelligence sovereign that lacks objective consciousness and self-will and is subject to public oversight and the ability by the public to investigate, publish, vote for the policies chosen by the artificial intelligence and implement the recommendations outlined by the system. Solve the better AI processing will result in a more cogent policy than the ever can to predict and prevent future threats. Goldberg, 20 policy informed by tech is more complex than ever. Policymakers must address supply chain, climate inequality, tech AI, misinformation, and more AI to bind the literature and put policy on founder footing, big data and language processing enable decision makers. So look beyond indicators and experts, articles, patents, and reports analyzed to identify mega trends or fading topics and to provide predicted opportunities. Machine learning can map competencies in centers of excellence. It will find weak signals and disruptive wide cloud effects and perform gap analysis and guide legislation applications, steer proactive policy. Otherwise, mismatch between science and reality will cost us even more in the future. Hypocrisy, solves extinction, no turns fuse. 17. Some are musing on replacing democracy with AI, since superintelligence will inevitably emerge and could pose catastrophic risks if it pursued its own goals. We should carefully design superintelligence. A global singleton is inevitable to suppress bad AIs and mitigate X risks such as nuclear and bioterror. Advocates for robotics who point at the biases of human decision and hold up algorithmic governance as a solution. Algorithms can more easily be recoded than human institution. Inferiority, human rationality is the focus. Weakness of human government stem from mammalian programming. Benevolence coded AI sovereign will be superior because it will adjudicate our conscience and express preferences to be altruistic, beginning to direct humanity where volitions are fulfilled in the best manner interests of their own, contrary to those of the government. The best option is governance without conscience and itself will be a perfect vehicle for debate and decision making and administration. We need civil freedom to investigate, publish, and associate mechanisms for bottom-up oversight, communication, and decision making replacement of government with algorithms is desirable and inevitable. Next, the United States federal judiciary should enact substantial criminal justice reform through creating new sentencing guidelines in cases involving transgender prisoners, including at least limited discretion by actors at sentencing, case-by-case consideration of personal characteristics and deference to the rehabilitative model. Next, the United States executive branch should enact substantial criminal justice reform through creating new sentencing guidelines in cases involving transgender prisoners, including at least limited discretion by actors at sentencing, case-by-case consideration of personal characteristics and deference to the rehabilitative model. Next, an act is only done by Congress. That excludes the court. McMurray. 20. MD Health Corp's meaning of an act is unpersuasive. The common usage of an act does not include the court. The legislature has the authority to enact laws, but adopt is not to limit courts make law through adoption of rules or principles. Determine an act and adopt must be read to contemplate different things, or one will be rendered superfluous. Refer for limits, including the court exposes our topic to every decision that marginally deals with criminal justice and competition. The court's counterplan is a crucial functional limit and point of consultation. Otherwise, NEG loses the best generic on the topic. Next, infrastructure passes now. PC is key. Demonics. 410. Biden's advantages face a crucial test. Republicans mount opposition. GOP centrists here rising frustration by the lack of meaningful outreach. Biden's biggest advantage dimension and similar are consistent with their past positions. Every lawmakers by name matters in the 50-50 Senate. Large portions of Biden's job plans could pass using reconciliation. PC is key. Fund 3-5 remains to be seen whether Biden can use legislative jobs to usher in co-op and major legislation. Nobody got to say any fights. Major groups are pressuring with infrastructure that could sway Republicans. Reconciliation would require balance competing demands from Dems to unite the party. Biden's balancing initiatives. Obama Dems hold extremely thin majority. It's only getting harder. The plan trades off party. 20. Biden has been elected on progressive criminal justice President Biden will face constraints as all presidents ever campaign a big promises. Government moves slowly, time and peace are limited, and his administration will need to prioritize the economic fallout key to beat China limits. 3-time China accelerated efforts to move up the chain of international trade bill would invest $10 billion in tech hubs and National Science Foundation distribute $100 billion research and manufacturing. Next legislative priority shore up supply chains, expand American semiconductors, create 5G networks nationwide, and $4 billion in investments enable to outcompete China. Losing to China causes Luke war that's pot. 20 COVID-19 may decline economic power of China by military readiness. She claimed that China should take center stage in the world. The military planet's view development to deliberative efforts to undermine U.S. power and influence in the Pacific and Middle East. Since the U.S. economy has declined by 4.8%, of the PRC wanted to challenge the U.S. This will be the time the PRC is exploiting the opportunity. China will use its clout to escalate efforts to take control in this SES. The U.S. Navy capabilities are in doubt. This may encourage China to approach the U.S. while it is weak. The virus has increased the likelihood of a militarized encounter. The U.S. will continue to maintain power in the international system based on the assumption that the U.S. will be able to recover power as a temporary loss of the U.S. is unable to get the virus under control. COVID pose significant risk. Threats to the U.S. economic Germany. Next, substantial CGR requires a holistic approach to the overall CGS. Morris 70 holistic approach to CGS is essential to substantial CGR are capable of affecting the overall system. Enemies throughout words and phrases. Enemies throughout violation of the F affects a sub neg for limits and ground into possibly neg against infinite on the F that affects small areas of criminal justice. Next, the United States through a limited constitutional convention called for and ratified by at least 38 of the states ought to enact substantial criminal justice reform through creating new sentencing guidelines in cases involving transgender prisoners, including at least limited discretion by actors at sentencing case-by-case consideration of personal characteristics and deference to the rehabilitative model solves and avoids policy solving. 18. Bypass Congress. States could amend constitution limited to specific issues. Next, the National Governors Association. Skip that. Okay.
Yeah.
This side. Yeah. Go to this side. Roberts vote against anti-abortion law because of sterilization. That's Millheiser. 20. Roberts cast a key vote to strike down the anti-abortion law. His views haven't changed. Roberts gave the right to an abortion because Louisiana presented the weakest case. So Roberts concluded last year. This has to compel him to strike down Louisiana law. The result is controlled by her decision 4 years ago. The plan change of precedent crushes sterilization. That's Mill 17. Consider decides promotes predictability and legitimacy, fewer overrulings, increase consistency, the public order behavior in accordance without subsequent court will reach the opposite conclusion. Stare decisive promotes reliance on decisions of perception that courts apply the law even law consistently or promote the rule of law, although the court retains flexibility in individual cases and recognize it must not overturn precedents. Arbitrarily mere disagreement is not enough. That gets modeled internationally. Purdue 2012. Cross-jurisdictional legal transfer causes instances of borrowing like are everywhere. Courts around the consult of foreign peers and interpreting provisions. Faster communication, ease of travel, and globalization of education contribute to intensification of borrowing. Migration of ideas is one of the central features of contemporary practice for scholars who proclaim transplants impossible because culture upstairs the relationship borrowing dangers of misunderstanding. Weak courts cause global coups. That's Sharp and Jenkins. 3 coups precipitate civil wars and international crises. Coups are occurring with less frequency, but may be short-lived. Some conditions MP coups where democratic procedures provided to utilize means to resolve conflicts, and coup will be less likely if groups will leave it in democratic process and respect the limits. Stress over social unrest, economic problems, political conflicts, or internal violence and assassinations. Mark the card at assassinations, extinction lead. 13. Their destructive dynamic will involve world politics. The foundation of our world are dynamite potential for conflicts on the scale of horrific wars. It's very much with us if we didn't live in such a tinderbox. Instability, remote place triggered waves of instability that rip nuclear Pakistan apart or trigger conflict with India, complicate security and the oil supply on which the economy depends. The weak states are petri dishes for Al Qaeda. Mark the card at Al Qaeda. Oh, that was the end of the card. Sorry. Go to the case. They have zero solvency card for the words in the plan. No evidence to describe the rehabilitative model. Likely circumventive people will be sent to prison anyway, which still causes suffering. Doesn't solve. 95% of cases are in state courts. Todd. 19. Incarceration is a big problem nationwide. 95% of criminal cases will file in state court system compared to federal court. The sentencing may demonstrate the importance of state courts and mass incarceration plan gets circumvented. Bernstein 15. The judicial conference with the approval of the U.S. Supreme Court and Congress mandate the FRE 702 for conflicts about Darbury. Sought to codify a more rigorous approach to testimony, although many courts faithfully applied amended Rule 702. The same division that existed prior to 2000 exists today on the first time issued the judicial conference sought to resolve the Ninth Circuit disregarded the intent of amended Rule 702D, rejected the Mark the card rejected the go to framing. Extinction outweighs bomb and buried. 18. Catastrophe that causes extinction of all future generations. Loss would be all future generation. 500 trillion and underestimate risky was probably times magnitude. Should try 500 trillion times hard to prevent a catastrophe. Then a life's tiny reduction merit significant effort. All life should be valued equally. This suggests a very high value for reducing GCR risk, and I can correct by looking at full sequences would lead to particular catastrophe. Anything else is a tautology. Green 10 telling us that moral judgment is not rational, divine deontology, and values that are not deontological consequentialists are against treating people as mere objects. If you ask why it's wrong to push someone to pay 5 others, answers will be tautological, don't explain anything. There seems to be something deeply right because they give voice to moral emotion. They don't explain the philosophy in question. Cognitive bias goes nag wiener. 16. Existential catastrophe could destroy life on Earth. People exhibit concern about risks that are available, the ability to envision and feel the event logical fluency or some risks occur once in eons and are not experienced. Experts warn about climate change, AI, and asteroid collisions. Rare risks are not recent, visible, or salient. Mental availability is lacking. A long time interval can lead to complacency and vulnerability. People envision going into things that may not translate into concern. Neural pathways draw on experience events. The brain relies on available events. Neglect on comments. Risk may yield neglect compounded by disdain for warnings. The warning is viewed as insane. Mark that card. Insane.
All right, are you open for cross-ex? Status of the counter plans.
The status quo is always options.
Can you kick planks?
No.
Any reasons to reject the team?
I don't think so.
Okay, starting off with this AI counter plan. Has AI ever made criminal justice rules in the past? Because this card seems to be talking about climate change and supply chains.
Our argument is that it has not been applied to criminal justice, or AI of this sort has not been applied to policy creation broadly. That's our uniqueness claim and the reason we spill it.
Okay, so I'm a little bit confused about why doing the AF in the context of one criminal justice reform all of a sudden causes robocracy.
Since it hasn't been applied to criminal justice before, the AF is doing it on the AF is key to prevent a procedure that would apply it to future sort of CJR and policy broadly.
Yeah, the first card in the 1NC on this says that using it in certain contexts creates a routinized process that spills over. We'll read more cards that say
using it in certain contexts. Those contexts that it mentions is supply chains.
No, the thing I'm about to say answers this really well. So we're going to read more cards in the 2NC that using AI to make decisions in niche, unexpected places is actually best for spilling over because it demonstrates that in localized policy contexts it works, which causes public buy-in for it.
Okay, so a bunch of people see that AI decided to move around some prisoners, and all of a sudden they're like, "Wow, we are going to use this for everything." Like, I'm a little bit confused about the
used for everything. We just need to win. If it solves the case, we just win a risk that is used for something else and improves governance in a broad sense.
Okay, used for something else. Like, what's the brink for robocracy? How many other applications does AI need to be applied?
The card is tagged robocracy. Perhaps it's a bit extreme. We're not saying we delegate all decision-making to AI. The counterplan text makes it clear that the public has control over it. Our argument is just broadly, AI is better at making decisions on a structural level, which makes it more able to solve existential risk. And even if we don't go for like an extinction thing, it just
the infrastructure disad, I'm confused about why the plan takes up Biden's political capital if the Sentencing Commission is part of the judicial branch.
Our argument will be, if you go for that, Biden would take the fall. People would perceive a policy is happening under his administration. And
why?
Because he is the president and people will blame things on him.
Wait, so like a conservative Supreme Court ruling, does that get pinned to Biden just because it's under his administration?
The AF is not a Supreme Court
I know, but I'm asking about what the perception link is. Why does the public view a judicial action as being Biden's fault?
Because, no, answer that. Or did my timer go off, or is everyone else's?
There's still 18 seconds.
Oh, my bad. Okay, so the perception is that there are controversial policies done under his administration, which is sufficient to win a link. That's
okay. So any controversial policy done under Biden is sufficient.
We'll win why the app is uniquely controversial. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take a few seconds. I'm still running prep, obviously. You didn't read NGA, right?
No.
Okay, prep stopped at 9:10.
Okay, I'm gonna attach it right now. My computer's being like really slow, so I promise you that. Okay, it should be sent. So let me know when everyone has it. Okay. Is everyone ready for an order?
I haven't gotten it yet.
Okay, I'm gonna give an order. It's the advantage, framing, T-enact, T subsets, the consult artificial intelligence counterplan, the courts counterplan, the executive counterplan, the con-con counterplan, the Roberts disad, the infrastructure disad.
I still haven't gotten it.
Okay, just let me know when you have it.
Yeah.
Can you do that again?
Yeah. Advantage framing, T-enact, T subsets, consult AI, courts, executive, constitutional convention, Roberts, infrastructure.
Have other people gotten it yet, or just me?
It says it's sent to you. I could try resending it if that'd be helpful.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, I'll do that. Okay, I just sent it again. They're the same.
I've not gotten it. I can give you a different email. Maybe just forward it to that.
Yeah, same. I didn't get it either.
Neither of you have received.
On CPS email.
It's probably a CPS thing.
Yeah, I'll type one in the chat.
Maybe check your spam.
That's the right email.
Oh yeah, check spam.
Oh yeah, check spam. I'll do it again then. Yeah, it's not in my spam or trash.
Okay, I'll reply to all and add your emails. Oh. Sorry, I'm having a hard time typing. Okay, I'll just attach it again, I guess. You will be receiving 3 2ACs. Okay, see if that works. I just sent it.
Okay, I just got it in the Gmail. Give me a second. I'll load it. Okay, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, is anyone not ready? Okay. 1 and C1 and 2, we do have solvency for words in the plan. Read both Kulak cards. They're really specific. 1 and C3, the sentencing guidelines apply to state quiz 2. They have the force of law that will be more on the counterplane of 1 and C4. Their circumvention card is about the federal rules of evidence, which obviously has nothing to do with the app. This card doesn't apply to us. On framing, you should overcorrect for cognitive biases. Extinction claims create artificial fear of transgender people that justifies ignorance of aberrant prison policies. Extinction discourse causes ongoing violence against women, but evaluate the debate through a feminist lens, resolves existential risks through shifting away from normative policy making. That's the Mitchell card, and prioritize probability. Absurd dissads win when minuscule extinction risks are sufficient. Long chains reduce probability. Linear predictions fail because the world is full of unpredictable variables. That's the Kessler card and on TNAC. Plain text in a vacuum. Plain can be implemented by Congress, creating sentencing laws and enactments with legally established or make law. The act is the same as legislative laws. It's right 13. Plain language is not preventing enactment of legislative enactments established by legal act, and the court will have the force of law indistinguishable from legislative laws, citing Black's Law Dictionary, and the Sentencing Commission enacts as fair and free. Properly understood, the ex post facto prohibition doesn't use the Sentencing Commission statutory authority to enact any guidelines. Well, establishments will indicate that this is the correct solution. This analysis is directly applicable to the federal sentencing guidelines. We prefer our interpretation. The Sentencing Commission is the main authority over sentencing procedure. Arbitrary exclusion limits have valuable debates and precision rights. Right sides course decisions and hesitate to exclude regular court cases. Functional limits, the SR states federalism and politics off ground. There are no viable Congress key warrants means we can't be agent counterplans. Limits explosion inevitable. The topic is worded poorly, so it's inevitably super broad. And predictability. Sentencing Commission is core of the topic. Generics against sentencing acts still apply, and reasonability good is good enough causes a race to the bottom and incentivizes WT to base on T subs. We meet the plan of substantial is instrumental and 8. A widespread and substantial quantification of criminal sentencing is the introduction of sentencing guidelines. Sentencing determines both location, severity of punishment. Substantial means a considerable size and effect. That's core and 20. Substantial is offenders meaning considerable and telling effect of substantial reform and counter interpretation. Sentencing is the imposition of punishment. Topic by directionality makes sense. Reduction is topical. That's champion and 8. Sentencing is the imposition of punishment on a federal and conviction for a criminal offense. Prefer predictability. There has no intention to define or exclude predictability. Outweighs the precondition for research and clash. After all lapses to unbeatable picks under their model of functional limits. Solid states, evolution, courts, and politics and cross-apply reasonability. On the consult AI counterplan perm. Do both perm. Do the counterplan perm. Do the AF and consult AI on a separate issue and perm. Do the counterplan. Then the AF consult counterplans are bad. These keep the debate away from the AF to focus on arbitrary recommendation that kills education. It's also bad for fairness. The counterplan results in the AF, so it's just a question of when it's infinitely regressive. If they don't get consult counterplans and it justifies intrinsic or untraditional perms. Reject the team that uses transgender prisoners as a political tool by choosing to consult an inanimate object about issues as serious as transphobia. It bolsters all of our framing offense. It's not based in precedent. It won't be trusted, and AI is racist and discriminatory. It will recommend that the AF won't be done. That's you in News 1230. The tool hadn't learned how to recognize the difference between blackface because the images used to train it had mostly been of whiteface as much as the data used to teach AI is taken from consumers around the world often without considering global AI quality is mirrored AI. Which ultimately designed by developers in the West overwhelmingly by main case of the wrongful arrest. Just one example of the dangers posed by the case of the wrongful arrest is just one example of dangers posed by a lack of diversity in the highly important field, and the AI and the counterplan is super far off. The counterplan consults with the technological equivalent of a cockroach. It's equivalent and Gregerson in 20. Exaggerating contingents as well as the press even in body systems displaying the overall intelligence of a cockroach is proving elusive, let alone a system that can rifle a human being. The difficulty of sealing up cannot be overstated, and the real world is incredibly complex, results in bad decisions and bias. You can use the other card above for that. On the course counterplan perm to both shields linked because we are part of the judiciary. Perm to the counterplan, the AF is a judicial branch, not mutually exclusive or functionally competitive, and current sentencing penalties are binding. Only the commission can change them. That's Kulak 18. Even if trial judge could explicitly consider gender as sentencing, the guidelines having incurring effects and still result in punishment. Supreme Court under sentencing produce an incurring effect for supposed to determine the applicable guidelines range. Trial judges have no incentive to make better punishments. Congress and the courts will leave formal control over housing up to correctional discretion and acceptance of personal testimony is key to better school for healthcare for trans prisoners. That's Hellbuck 15. Refusing medically necessary treatment to transgender people that constitutes deliberate indifference legal advocates to start framing plaintiffs factual summaries around stories of discrimination. Start framing is one of the most important advocacy tools. Courts rely on factually denial treatment was not related to recent security benefits as litigants affirm their allegations around stories of discrimination where courts will discuss discrimination set of persuasive case law will develop and counterplans without solvency advocates are a voting issue. We can't indict a non-existent proposal, dodge topic literature, and have engagement in nurse counterplans. Solvency CTR is complex. You shouldn't trust high schoolers to resolve it on any of the counterplans without solvency advocates. We get new answers if they are extended on the executive counterplan. Perm both remains divided and follows up as CTR initiatives and perm the counterplan. Then the AF shields net benefit because it's perceived as follow-on links and net benefit. Executive action turns the president into a lightning rod, and Congress members who are tied to Biden take credit. Creating sentencing guidelines is unique to the Sentencing Commission. Proves the counterplan is illegal and not an executive jurisdiction at best. No one follows on it. Worse, you get struck down in a legal field as a voting issue. Creates utopian debates that destroy education and political skills. Condo is a voting issue because to Stratsky by destroying us from reading our best offense and encourages going for whichever argument we undercover. Our interrupt is they get one condo, cross-apply, log in, Hallback, and BOP respect the counterplan. That's Morale 18. BOP is rolling back on a bomb policy intended to protect transgender inmates and federal businessmen and manual non-medical officials use biological sex in the initial determination. The Department of Justice deferred resolution of the issues to BOP director and administration is clearly prepared to face its own inhumane agenda. And on Concom, perm people shields the link to net benefit, perm the counterplan, perm the plan when the counterplan's amendment is ratified, shields the net benefit because it's perceived as following the schism in 5. Actual ratification each day much longer between the not ratified until 2 and 3 years later. Legal time depends on the gravity of the issue, intensity upon the sentiment of whether or not a time limit was written to be amendment. It's not intrinsic. They introduce an element of time to the counterplan text by explicitly dividing the amendment process into temporarily distinct phases. We permute that delay by fixing it to our plan, which doesn't specify time frame anywhere in the text. It links to the net benefit. States call for Concom, but Congress has to approve it, and neural means proves that Biden signs a bill and create and cross-apply Kulak and Hallback and Moreau. And that doesn't stop. The affirmative sentencing guidelines have the force of law. Concord can't regulate how sentences are adjudicated. Sentencing commissions, key and corrections administrations get to interpret court language. However, they will only exercise discretion away from corrections facilities. It's worth it all 15. Standards regulating searches do not include language offering inmates for the issue of transgender inmates as a complex, but the courts having provided limited guidance. State legislation and corrections administrators have been left to sort out the requirements based on their interpretation of courts have courts ruling and the mandates of the PRA. And rollback is said. Concord triggers rollback of other constitutional values. That's bad. Roberts. There's no link. The acts under court ruling guidelines are implemented by the USSC police brutality cases. That's Roman 412. So until towards the actions of the officers involved avoids killing violated as a reasonable officer with reasonable standards of force. That process determines whether an officer's use of force decisions are legit. Judge Cahill told jurors that the defense case will begin on Tuesday and wrap up by Thursday. Monday to closing arguments set to begin. And no link. Roberts' actions are inherently unpredictable. That's Wolf and 20. Although the president's house and senate are unpredictable, it's hard to pin down courts more complicated than observers give it credit for. Unpredictability is larger than the work of Roberts and non-unique equivalent of ACB debt court legitimacy. That's inevitably causes conservative rulings as to vote 1027. There will be the next Supreme Court Justice Rush to government jeopardize the court's legitimacy. She faces a slew of problem cases, including a challenge to the Affordable Care Act, Mississippi recently asked the Supreme Court to consider its 15 makeup version piano, which challenge of made she was likely to rule in a conservative direction on civil rights issues of reliable conservative vote on the court, credit court, and and violations of stare decisis since their card. Then there's no impact. First, by impacting the courts means they're strong inevitably. Second, their card impact card says cues are short term, won't escalate. Third, their impact card talks about specific conflicts like Israel and Palestine, not about cues. And card concedes stare decisis doesn't matter in the context of the Act. West is green. That's no 17. Stare decisis carries less weight in constitutional cases. The court therefore applies stare decisis with less rigidity in the constitutional context. The court has always required a departure from precedent to be supported by some special justification on infrastructure. No link plan doesn't involve a congressional debate. It's the Sentencing Commission, which is the judicial branch. Finally, will focus on COVID nominations before infrastructure delay means the plan passes first. Infighting means delay is inevitable. That's Bolton 415. Moderates are circling around a compromise infrastructure proposal. Democrats are more apt to push for a higher price tag moving a scale down infrastructure package to the Senate. Maybe a tough sell. The most influential Senate expansion is endorsing a scale down infrastructure bill. And salt fights means the bill won't even get through the House. That shall be 418. Battle over satisfying to derail infrastructure bipartisan group of more than 2 dozen. This issue is so critical. We will oppose any legislation that does not repeal the limitation to eliminate the cap. Would be a discussion about how that would be paid for and what would be taken out. The raise the cost making it more difficult for Pelosi to usher the plan, and it'll pass with reconciliation. That's Balls 410. Metro, there's no circumstances in which we can filibuster pending concluded. He and Republicans were far and didn't believe negotiations was changed. He pushed the bill on a party line vote under reconciliation. Then China is ahead inevitably. That's Al and Pan and 20. China's about to launch this national blockchain platform part of their strategy to digital transformation. BSN is ready to launch for domestic commercial use. Project to geopolitical implications move very much like One Belt One Road. China has an ambition to be the leader. The low price will encourage a vast number of enterprises to use the BSN to invest and innovate. Innovate, and there's not even a bill yet, and there's no vote until September. That's leaving for 15. Congress has no explicit deadline. Real deadline for the full package maybe with the end of September when the current service transportation policy expires. Infrastructure is one time sensitive. We don't need an artificial deadline. And Equality Act and Congress now votes. Equality Act, call confirmation, Gupta confirmation, policing overhaul bill, and Congress thump. If they extend that, we can extend those cards. Okay, I'm open for cards.
Okay. Reasons to reject the team. Is it just all counter plans?
There were a few. I read condo. Consult counterplans aren't a reason to reject the team.
Okay. Condo, what flow did you put that on?
Well, I had condo was on. Does anyone know? Condo was on the executive counterplan. On consult, there's another reason to reject the team about, like, you can read it, the transgender prisoners as a political tool.
Oh, yeah, I got that.
Okay, you can look in the doc.
Yeah, I got it. Roberts dissent. First argument is that the F is in a court ruling and that guidelines are implemented by the USSC or the Supreme Court. How does that sort of happen?
No.
Is like the Sentencing Commission like rule that rehabilitation is mandatory and the cases that are brought to the Supreme Court get ruled on favorably? Like,
the Kulak card says that the United States Sentencing Commission guidelines are binding. They are grounded in authority, all of the things that we've already talked about. Obviously, that is separate. It's an independent agency than the judicial branch. The argument of the no link argument is that it's not a court ruling, which is what all of your link argument is based about. You need to read a card that says that a United States Sentencing Commission guideline implementation will trigger the link to the disad, which you haven't done.
Okay, sure. Brutality cases that thump. Where does it say that Roberts was a swing vote in this?
I don't think that it needs to say Roberts is a swing vote necessarily. It's just that there's other Supreme Court cases that will swing. There are other Supreme Court cases that will obviously influence Roberts more. This is way more perceived than anything that the AF would be, because all these police brutality cases have been happening like throughout the entire year. Okay. I mean, this is like an even bigger.
Real quick, what was the card you said says that guidelines are applied to states.
Wait, sorry, what?
What was on like the case of it? What was the card you said says that the card you said says that sentencing guidelines are applied to states from the federal level?
On the 2AC?
Yeah, like
In the
and the
two-
2AC, when you answer,
The Kulak card that I think was
Oh,
read
yeah.
on the court's counter plans says the
okay,
was.
that's
you
fine,
can look at that.
thanks. Yep.
Permutation, actually. That's all right.
Are you using the rest for pro?
Yeah, yes, please.
Um, 10 minutes starting. I'm sorry, you said the Kulak card on the court's counterline?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Okay, stop at 809. The chat. Setting it out right now. Okay, it's sent. Order is the AI counterplan, the framing, then case. Let me know whenever it gets it. Is anyone not good? Okay. Cool. If anyone's not ready, just stop me. The camera wants also represent cases against benevolence code is AI sovereign override the planet. Here's the recommendations produced by the algorithm. Externally, AI-based governance solves extinction, the risk of climate change, disease, nuclear, and unpredictable threats cannot be solved within human timescales. Only outsourcing governance AI can come up with solutions to solve extinction. Turns case political science is constrained by limits of human intelligence, which makes errors inevitable. AI does not make mistakes, which means it will produce a comparatively better outcome. Focus efficiency, camera solves the terminal impact any deficits. So error neg on risk if the net benefit dropped. Internal net benefit means it has to outweigh the case. Permutation do both. Perm do both. But perm do both is in genuine consultation means you do not adhere to the AI's recommendations because you do the plan before. This is not solved. Since we need to adhere to AI and to AI in order to reap the rewards that Scott Berger is about creating a systematic process of consultation. The perms version of it fails since it means we ask AI if we did good but don't actually listen to it. Perm the camera plan severs for the issue for net ground one. Functionally, camera plan does not result in the app, results in a different policy that solves better. Humans are prone to inevitable mistakes, which means the app got something wrong and the AI it fixes it, which means it does something that is different, and the camera plan's mechanism severs a resolved OED. A non-free from GP should, in summers 94 should. It's not only shall and more than desirability instructions and stating shall should obligation more than a should mean the same as shall or must in present means at present time presently remedial activities of you in the future. Modern English word the conclusion that the past conjunctive should is employed present indicative. C and Act Cox 20 enactment occurred by most line of law and access understood as mean to provide legislation. The political law enactment is the last act of enacting enactment date is distinct from the date legislation becomes effective. Enactment means last act necessary. Their C answers can't get them out of that because their argument is that they are legislative in a form which that card also assumes. D substantial words in phrases 64 substantial meaning that which not really can be but is supposed to potential real present time. 2 textually the camera plan says ought not should. Third normal means is one but when you see evidence they have none that says normal means is consulting AI that's best for predictability. 4 after be certain and immediate. A net ground every decide on the topic. Laws on implementation law and conditionality means the F can avoid to shift for best offense makes them a moving target. B F ground guarantees durability and makes debates about should not would otherwise the F would lose to roll back. The next argument is perm to camera plan then the plan intrinsic as delay present neither the plan nor the counter plan, but the definitions above prove that the F has to be immediate as well. The per theory, the permutation to the F counter plan and the F on a separate issue. No perm text in the 2AC means it is both textually and you presume it's textually not textually illegitimate since they have no reason why it is not, but it's functionally intrinsic as a consultation in either the plan or the counter plan. That's a bit realistic. F introduced unpredictable functions which Jackson and Grand functional combination is the only relevant standard. Logic, no debates about the text of the plan. Debates are only about whether or not the plan is a good idea. 2 net ground textually intrinsic firms like the F moot on the offense because they can scramble words in the plan to make and the counter plan to create new functions. I'll answer it when they insert a perm text if they do in 1ER, but that would also be in you. The theory arguments framing issue. The counter plan is not a consult. Counter plan does not result in the F. Either results in a modified policy or different policy altogether. And debates over this counter plan are good. Kuziminsky and Mizuraka 20. The role of AI's policy not to make AI policy based features. Destroying power consideration like analysis. I pointed out on the bridge. Towards mechanism lack of clarity in the gap between agenda setting and validation is key to amplify voices. And vision ways to organize our world through thinking public values or our relation with majority powers. What we are optimizing and see that we consider that to consider that solutions and scrutinize algorithm practice giving innocent means while acknowledging trade-offs cannot be substituted by any indicator. It's supposed to assess suitability, especially in which crisis will force to embrace policy of social systems and better measures and anticipate challenges. If not, we get one or we get process counter plans. 1 key test the app, certainty and immediacy. Key warrants 2 the counter plans remain predictable and grounded in base. Solves the advocate proves shapes legitimacy since lit determines grounded is most real world. 3rd, key check upside bias. First and last speech, infinite prep topic. Lit bias, functional limits on C can't get them out of this because every app can nichely innovate new answers to Asian counter plans. 4, no ground loss. They can choose a ground debate. Impact from the net ben or when certain your immediacy key. 5, competition shapes legitimacy if the counter plans are more desirable. Op costs indicates the app. 6, prefer internet abuse and on all non-resolutional theory. Potential use is impossible to quantify. Anything else has the ratio. The bottom 7 direct to argue the team at worst. They say it's they say that the counter plan is transphobic. Answering the bias arguments below proves this. AI is better than making decisions than humans, but AI is smarter than humans. They should not trust human biases to make decisions. This might sound rhetorically powerful when they say it, but winning the stuff below takes us out. AI being an object is meaningless. Everything is an object. It is an object that is able to make much better decisions than humans. They say no spillover. Yes, spillover. The one C evidence says forwarding it in specific context allows it to be applied broadly and creates a routinized process. Forwarding the counter plan's mechanism in specific context spills over. Boston 14 no thanks for logical evidence that is where critical for solutions and policy problem in matter likely to adjust in terms of strange choice architecture offer way forward in certain policy context. First solution be feasible. Must be shock environmental plan. Policy context under cultural infraction. The bias argument 1 counter plan solves AI subject public oversight and ability of the public to investigate, publish, and vote for the policy stress and how the AI to self-correction. The AI would correct gaps and to resolve bias. 3rd, they dropped it to Kantian deontologically coded AI, which would not harm humans. Ingenuity combined with technic solves. Reinhardt 19. Many are pessimistic, but life is better poverty. No sign of on high people. I'm longer democracy result in information abundance and correct asymmetries being every survivor. Pessimism we have from attack we would provide taking the human collective. There's a system and tech systems. That's what we handle these. It's application of human engineering and all these varieties. The future imagined is strange. Best of the works. Peace, a better world to be live in. Fair that the future might be built. Optimism. He's for a better world. Not going to read the next card. They say there's no AI now. Yes, it's smarter than us. Read more cards below. I will. Or I'll read more cards below. But the tech necessary exists now. Citra 19 AI. Human intelligence, complexity, problems involving structure prediction and data policies complex involves many considerations, uncertain consequences are employed and many facets. There's a potential for beneficial use of policies can be realized, and we will see improvements in tech involved by considering your future tech and not speculative developments. World complex argument, current governance structures, emphasize bunk decision making processes that make evolving complex problems impossible. Only AI solves. Boston 14. Let's talk about probability, uncertainty, impact, experience in their future, and physical reducing competition. Exhibit C's, but many problems also exhibit investment type of structures creating a for international podcasting. Human patients will be greater when short-term costs are direct, tangible, and visible in long-term benefits are lots more intelligible. They need to read that humans are smarter, which they won't have. We are right. Alexander 16. Let's take off. It's not read this. Supported by the vast majority of AI experts, Urban 15, recursive self-improvement, intelligence explosion, the EDR funds about when they believe we'd have reached HI by 2040, the progression from AI to yes, I haven't very quickly super so that magnitude is not something we can really grasp. Framing. 1 and C, 1 and 2, util is good, 1 future generations. Past studies indicate 500 trillion lives are likely to spawn and bear it. 2, egalitarian, only util values all lives equally. Anything else, requires saying some lives matter more than others, which is unethical. It's pure logic. Any other moral framework is a tautology since there relies on attitude and moral judgments. 2, preacher of the value of moral theories. That's great. They only know their impact is bad because causes suffering, which proves they agree with util. 1 and C, 3, bias goes neg. That's Werner. Will isolate 2 on the ability to heuristic your bias towards. 2, overinflate the risk of things you've already experienced and underestimate things you haven't, like X risks. The brain relies on past events to contextualize predictions, which is backed up by the consensus of psychologists. 2, mass numbing. Your brain cannot comprehend the massive numerical amount of life that extinction would destroy, causing you to underestimate the EV of our impacts to 2 framing issues. 1, absent alternative moral theory, you must logically default to utility even if that's perfect. 2, risk equals probability times magnitude. That's how EV calculations and math work. They say probability first. I answered that above. We multiply both together, which solves their offense. They say extremist or transphobic. We are not saying that trans people should be in prison. You also send them to prison, which is equally bad. But the counterplan solves this as well. And they have not proven why util itself is transphobic case. 1 is the cross proof the app is not likely to solve. Rehabilitation does not mean anything in a legal sense, and no cartel judges are not transphobic. They still get sent to prison, which is violent, which is like dropped argument in the 1 and C. 1 is the cross says that they trust individual judges to make good decisions. No evidence says judges are not also transphobic. They're mostly old white men and will not care about people broadly. The states outweigh 95% of cases are in 95% of convictions and imprisonments are in state courts, not federal courts. So evidence they said in the 2AC says that the sentencing guidelines spill over. Does not say that. I put the card in the doc so you can see it, read it. Not one line says that states are subject to it. We are also sentencing guidelines are not mandatory. They are discretionary, proven by here's a card, stance 5. In January 2022, I ruled that the restrictions sometimes unfrequent guidelines out of guidelines of federal justice for many years, 20 years, are no longer by them. That ruling came out in the United States worker and the United States for fun. In January 12, 2005, the Supreme Court ruled that strict and sometimes unfrequent guidelines out of federal judges for nearly 20 years were no longer by them. The ruling came up in the United States justice worker and United States for fun. Judges must continue to consult them, which proves that judges do not mandatorily have to follow the app, and no evidence says they will. The rehabilitation part of the app I explained above. It doesn't solve. No evidence quantifies what that is. There's no legal definition, which they said. So you just leave individual judges to decide.
Are you good for cross?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so on this counter plan, you made a claim that AI doesn't make mistakes. Can you cite some data that supports that, or people who have done trials or anything that shows that data has 100% probability of not making any mistakes?
I think the Citra card and the first 1 and C card say that, but you have not read evidence that humans make less mistakes. So even if you're right that AI makes some mistakes, humans are more prone to do that.
Okay, if AI is so I guess just has all this power, won't make any mistakes, is perfect to implement all of these policies, why hasn't it already been done?
It's like asking why they haven't passed the plan yet. People haven't thought of it. I don't know. The government hasn't had the idea.
Okay, but we do have AI available to us now.
Yes.
What card says that?
The Citra card.
What card says that the level of AI that's necessary to implement the counter plan and solve for your internal net benefit is available?
The level of AI necessary to solve the internal net benefit is not super intelligence or AGI. We just need AI that is capable of collecting massive amounts of data and making a moral judgment. The evidence that says super intelligence will exist says it comes by 2029, and the evidence that says the one necessary for the counter plan says it exists now, to be clear.
Okay, I wanted to ask about the like Seitra card that you keep referencing. What is the near term as it's tagged? And this card is from 2 years ago. So has it already happened? Is the near term like 5 years? What's the time frame for this?
Well, that part of the card about near term is talking about AGI and super intel. The part before that, I believe, maybe it's the part after, I can check.
So are AGI and super intel the ones that like have enough capacity to implement the plan and be consulted?
Our argument is that AGI and super intel are not necessary to solve the app right now. We just need an AI that can compile and understand and research a bunch of data. The super intel and AGI stuff, the 1NC evidence says that those will arise by 2029. The counter plan, by pre-coding them with deontological values, prevents them from being bad and allows us to utilize the benefits of them by implementing them in governance structures and giving them a moral.
So the counter plan can't actually solve the, like, it wouldn't be able to solve the affirmative for 8 years.
No, I said that like the AGI is not necessary to solve the AF. We only need an AI that is smarter than humans and able to process massive amounts of data. AGI, to be clear, refers to AI that is able to improve itself recursively in an exponential.
Okay, the Kazemski card you read says that AI like disregards power considerations. How does it solve the AF if the AF outlines that the impact and the impacts in the 1AC are caused by like patriarchies, etc.?
Yeah, so the AI is coded with deontological values based on Kantian moral theories, which say that you cannot harm people, so it would not harm people. So it would, the app doesn't like.
What does it define as harming people?
Causing suffering, like.
Okay.
It's going out right now. Order will be the give me a sec. The order will be the executive counterplan, the con counterplan, the courts counterplan, the infrastructure disad, then the Roberts disad. And I'm sending it right now. Okay, I sent it. Is anyone not good?
I don't have it yet.
Okay.
Also don't have it.
Is anyone not good now? Did you guys get it? Cool. I'm going to start in a couple seconds then. Great. The executive counterplan can see permutation, do both, but I'll do condo here. Conditionality is good. Neck flex, forcing us to go for it, even if it's the worst option, prevents effective strategizing. Second, innovation. Debaters are risk averse, having a fallback strategy allows us to break new arguments. Third, hard debate is good, forces the 2AC to pick their best offense, which focuses the debate and enhances the info processing. Fourth, checks AF bias. They get to pick the AF speak first and last and half topic bias. Fifth, excuse and nettle TD is in speed. Six, logic proving the counterplan is bad, doesn't prove the plan is good. Seven, counterinterpretation. What we did solves their offense. Eight, reject the practice, not the team. Stick us with them if it should have been unconscious. condo, ninth, potential abuses in a voter. It's illogical to make us defend infinite condo when that's not what we did. The con-con counterplan concede permutation do both. It's a test of competition limited. Con-cons are a reason to reject the argument, not the team, because condo justifies it and it wasn't identified in cross-sex anyways. The court's counterplan concede permutation do both. It's a test of competition. The infrastructure decide concede no link and it doesn't pass. There's no other offense here. Robert's system. Global cues outweigh first probability causes compounding political crisis in every country, multiplies the opportunities for great power drawing that sharp and civil war is more probable. Jervis, 2011 international wars are scarce enough. Vanishing civil strife remain and made salient by horrific examples that appear in the newspapers every day. Realism stresses the conflict against international war now seems significantly more robust than those limiting civil wars. In the absence of major wars, we find all other things to worry about. Second magnitude civil wars are the most deadly forces. Is Indo-Pac escalation, nuke winter blacks out the atmosphere. That's mean. The util debate was done in the 2NC, but the first argument is that there's no link. But it's a bad argument. At minimum, it takes out solvency. Not using the Supreme Court means they leave an ad hoc system where other countries are free to disregard the plan because this Supreme Court is the most authoritative in the picture. Second, they've said the U.S. Supreme Court enforces. That was the 2AC citing 1AC Kulak evidence. The 1AC evidence specifically says that Congress passed an act that clarified the extent to which federal trial judges could rely on rehabilitation, and it was eventually ruled on by the Supreme Court, which means cases, at least follow-on cases involving the action of the affirmative, will result in the Supreme Court reviewing certain cases which severs their 1AC solvency, anything else severs their 1AC solvency mechanism. Advocating F condo is a voting issue, moots all pre-run prep and makes all other negative offense contingent on 2AC goodwill. Also, other links, public pressure, Whittington and Johnson, 18 of the courts have now divided on the issue. The Supreme Court may feel that there is public disagreement and may feel that some of these divides are close to the body politic and want to step in to decide the matter. The court may have a unique ability to facilitate settlements because it can enforce its conclusion as it supervises the lower court. Second, double by neither the Supreme Court steps in to signal a new constitutional interpretation or uncertainties. Absolvency, Whittington and Johnson. 18, the court can play a role in declaring a new constitutional regime, affirming decision that uphold recent statutes, signal acquiescence by the old regime to the new order of the switch in time, ensuring uncertainty hovers over the statutes created by court's action. Justices feel the need to issue opinions that simply announce the limits of court granted simply to affirm what the fifth had done. And third, Supreme Court will take cases to ensure lower court compliance to Whittington and Johnson. 18, affirming may boost shared preferences of some lower courts are not aligned. The court may use uphold affirm cases as a carrot to amplify and empower judges who get in with a federal program. The court still has a risk of reversal of beat recalculation circuits as needed. The next argument is that there are thumpers, but no, stare decisis is strong now. First, Roberts, he's in charge and doesn't want to rock the boat. Our evidence assumes a conservative majority. Second, statistics, our evidence cites a longitudinal study of Roberts' decision making. He doesn't flip president. Third, reject their evidence is media swing. Our evidence explicitly says that it paints the law with broad brushstrokes and exaggerates the impact of small rulings. That's Miller-Heiser. Roberts raising legitimacy. That's Rosen. 20, Roberts would make it his priority to protect a court's legitimacy. Roberts achieved his goal. The court can be embraced as a neutral arbiter. He became the most powerful chief justice. Roberts was with the majority in all 5-4 decision, but one. He achieved the goal by converging around narrow bipartisan decisions in the Republic. Roberts achieved near unanimity, persuading liberal and conservative colleagues to agree. Roberts was more interested in legitimacy than purity. Mark the card at purity. Go to the next argument. It's that it's not unique because of other cases. It's wrong. Our uniqueness, Miller-Heiser evidence assumes this, and they need to win. He votes a certain way, and that his case goes against their decisis in this quote. June Medical proves he's the fifth vote that preserved the doctrine, but their evidence doesn't prove it's. He has to switch to preserve court legitimacy. They say Roberts is unpredictable, but no, I read cards above about why he's predictable based on institutional legitimacy because he wants to preserve the legitimacy of the court, and most recent polling data proves ideology doesn't determine legitimacy. That CSM 17 polls consistently show more trust in the court. There seems to be little correlation between opinions and whether someone is Republican, Democrat, or neither. The next argument is that ACB thumps all of our evidence prices is in. That was the thumper debate above, and she's in favor of the stare decisis, which was the empirics cited in the Miller-Heiser evidence. They say empirics fail, but no, our evidence says that Roberts believes in legitimacy. It doesn't matter if it's not true. Broadly, specificity of our internal link matters, which I'll answer more about here. They say that there are all causes to legitimacy. No, internal link or work done above proves that it's at least key to our scenario. Put on to read more evidence here. Stare decisis in one caucus spills over to others. Hoover 19, the strategy is not gone unnoticed. Inspired a debate in recent months about stare decisis. The debate stretches back to avoid arbitrary discussion. Some precedents overturned have been recent, but most have been on the books for at least 20 years, relying on one subversion to support another may well not have principles. Go back to the go back to the Rosen card. I'll finish that. Robert showed the same concern in the June.
Can you just say there actually, Matt,
information of avoiding the perception that the court would overturn precedents based on personnel precedent, additional notions, and judicial philosophy. Robert showing the Riddlers and the observer recalled a similar decision. Mark that card at decision.
Okay, we have 9-10 left. Starting prep. Okay, stop prep at 6:06. I'm just gonna put that in the chat. Okay. And then I'll send the cards I'm reading. Okay, cards should be sent. The order is going to be the advantage, and then framing, then the AI counter plan, and then the politics to sad.
Give me one sec. Okay, I'm good.
All right, is anybody not ready? Okay. The judge bias argument is new in the block, but it's only descriptive of the status quo. The Sentencing Commission solves because it creates binding guidelines that judges have to defer to. Those guidelines have empirically served as a basis for every sentence, and the threat of lawsuits is a sufficient deterrent. That's Kulak, and the state's argument is wrong. The guidelines have the force of law, which means the states follow on even if it's not formally codified. Solving for federal prisoners is also obviously still a good idea, and the rehabilitative model is not being sent into prison and being sent back into society instead. That's a clear enough definition and supported by our solvency advocate. On the framing page, their first argument is future generations, but this rhetoric justifies endless violence by reducing women to reproducible agents and constantly pushes off addressing structural violence and transphobia. It directly alters the decision calculus of leaders to pursue endless war making that causes serial policy failure while also justifying patriarchal violence in the CGS. Independently, a feminist-based approach leads to the greatest good for the greatest number by shifting decision calculus away from war, which solves their dissads. That's Mitchell evidence, and util first also excludes non-normative bodies via focusing on who has the most utility, which inevitably privileges the straight white male. Archetypes are specifically referencing studies of existential risk. Transgender populations are necessarily excluded from their impact calculus because existential risk reduction is obsessed with maintaining future generations. That's Colebrook. On the AI counterplan, the 2NC spent a ridiculous amount of time answering perm to the counterplan, but not enough time on perm to both. It solves 100% of their offense because the Sentencing Commission does the AFN policymakers ask AI to make further recommendations. There's no trade-off because both can exist in the same world. Their only answer is the Boston card, but read it after the debate. It's literally gibberish. Just as we need to reframe policy problems, which the perm obviously accesses to, it's not an applicable answer, and there's several deficits to the counterplan. AI is extremely racist. Only we are reading evidence in the context of criminal justice that proves that they just won't do the plan or create even more transphobic sentencing procedures, which obviously decks absolvency and links to reframing offense. The UN evidence says that they learn human biases and encode them into decisions. Their cards are terrible. Even if human decision making is integrated, there's no guarantee that those policymakers aren't unethical too, and it's racist. Tompkins 18. Bills of Monty that reflect the systemic bias of CGS. Powers make someone look riskier, but you know the people of color are more likely to risk than the whites for the same crime. Risk acceptance by big and history of bias, and AI algorithms are racist. The app can't solve embedded data flaws. Polanski 18. Machine learning models are only as reliable as the data. Their trained on inequalities are amplified by state bias algorithms. Even if engineers were to faithfully connect it and train a machine learning model, the AI will stick up the embedded parts of the model. Systemic patterns of inequality are everywhere, and even their evidence admits it. West reads blue. That's by 19. In answering the question of which system ethics would be most suitable for programming AI, variety about their questions were resolved, which made further investigation reading a definitive conclusion mission of determining how to program and ethicalize a problem by the reality that humans do not operate under a perfect ethical framework and their bias. Samuel 19. AI is not objective. Human bias can creep into it. Initial data to train those problematic recommendations will be problematic. We've seen this bias would often fail to capture factors in society because societies are incredibly complex behavioral systems. Even if accurately, that might not map. And the internal net benefit is a joke. Applying AI to one random criminal justice case does nothing to spill over to broader use. Cross-sex proves the card says that AI needs to be applied in forms like climate change, which is obviously not the app, and they have no good spillover war. And humans will always be smarter than AI. Win rate 18. People are extrapolating unrealistic expectations. Initial success. People are misled by artificial intelligence because of a lies of simple program logic interacting with ascribed emotional intelligence and empathy to its they can only match the patterns we have learned. Humans are optimized for learning unlimited patterns and selecting the patterns we need to apply to deal with whatever situation we find ourselves in. Cut credit, find ourselves in, and go to politics. The internal link to the dissat is terrible. Suffer warrants. First is their impact card is talking about specific conflicts like Israel, Palestine, and Iran. Obviously, court legitimacy has nothing to do with those hotspots. And second is that legitimacy of other major courts like the International Criminal Court solves the impact. Third is that civil war is empirically super unlikely. Biden and democratic norms solve the impact. And we haven't had civil war for generations. Fourth is that they have to win a high threshold for a link considering how old all of their cards are. Violations of stare decisis have occurred since they were written. And on the link debate, top level framing issue is there is zero link to the AF. Their internal link chain is about Robert's careful political calculus, but the AF uses the Sentencing Commission, which is a federal agency that has nothing to do with SCOTUS. They have zero specific evidence. The only answer in the one in R is AF condo, but we don't sever our mechanism. The AF will inevitably result in other court rulings, but those are in lower courts, not the Supreme Court, which doesn't change Robert's calculus. And there's definitely zero link. The recut of their evidence explicitly concedes that stare decisis is violated all of the time over constitutional issues. The AF has to do with due process and equal protection, which proves that stare decisis gets overruled inevitably, and one violation via the AF doesn't really matter. A nomination of ACB to destroy legitimacy, which stumps the impact. It makes the court look super partisan and reflects Trump. So questions of maintaining the veneer of neutrality no longer matters to Robert. It also destroys their balancing link because rulings are inevitably conservative, which means they have to win a high risk that two judges will flip on another ruling solely based on the AF. That's a devout evidence, and all causes to court legitimacy. Rooted Booker 19. Focus on the state of decisions of security for structural factors that play in the federal judiciary, lack of judicial diversity, height of the judge, and lack of judicial accountability undercut the court's legitimacy, have negative effects on judicial decision making exacerbated in recent years, and predictions of court justices are flawed. Roberts makes rulings impossible to predict because of his shifting political calculus. His views don't align with any party or textual structure, which means that accurate predictions are impossible. That's the Wolf evidence, and actions of individual justices can't be predicted with Musemi and Sobel to 9. It is impossible to predict a justice decision in a particular case with absolute certainty. Prior opinions cannot definitively predict how she or she would rule in future individual cases before the court, and court rulings are unpredictable. Sunday 928. Parent background show conservative implications. Would you go to overrule Roe v. Wade? And any answer would be speculative. It's hard to be certain. 3 reasons. The first is that even if justices can be characterized as conservative, they might have very different views about their judicial role and obligation. Cut this Sunstein evidence at obligation.
Okay. 809. Okay. AI counterplan, disadd, case framing. Here, let me untangle my headphones 1 sec. Actually, I have a card I want to send out. Okay, card is sent. Let me know if everyone gets it. Everyone got it, or? Oh. Okay. Everyone else got it? Okay. If anyone's not good, stop me. Okay. The counterplan solves the after results in their overall policy and organization towards AI-based governance, which solves every existential threat from issue. They have dropped extinctions inevitable from nuclear war, bioterror, and existential threat that humans cannot predict or smart enough to predict human timescales. Risk of spillover is sufficient about neg. Only AI-based governance can solve from issue. The top 1 AR reads a lot of cards, but does not answer a lot of the cards. The QNC reads hold the line and do not allow you to in our 2AR evidence comparison or extrapolation of 2NC evidence permutation to both. The 1 AR explains this as to the F and then asks the counterplan to make recommendations that cannot solve or offense because the process of the counterplan is that it creates the process of the counterplan that the perm creates is inherently non-binding. It does not require that we adhere to the AI's recommendations. The Boston evidence we read below on the spillover stuff says that adhering to its recommendations is key to reap the benefits of AI because it's the only way that we can actually do what it says it recommends. If we're that AI is smarter than humans, and this outweighs the risk of the deficits to the disadd. If we also the deficits are flipped. If we win below that AI is smarter than humans and that it is not racist, so we don't need to win. Spend a lot of time here. The spillover stuff will answer it. Below the permutation is light in the 1 AR, and they do not extrapolate in the 2. It's somewhat light in the 2 AR, so you should not let new extrapolation. The boss. I'll answer it below a bit more on the spillover stuff though. The AI racist debate, the 2 AR flat drops that we code morality into the AI. They have conceded that we coded such that it's not allowed to cause any human suffering and is forced to make decisions that it thinks will maximize human happiness. They've dropped the coding it into the AI solves the answer. This answers all the 1 AR cards, the cards 1 AR spams because all of them do not assume that mechanism of creating a benevolent AI as per the 1NC evidence. They've conceded that humans are also racist. Humans are prone to more biases than AI. AI is smart enough to know that racism is bad and causes suffering, which I'll do below. The Thompson evidence is about algorithmic risk assessments, which are when you use data to guess who is likely to commit more crimes, that even to determine who's more likely to commit crime, even if that is racist. That is not the AI we code with the ontological values. The author is a journalist at the Brenner Center, knows nothing about AI. Risk assessments are entirely different than that. What we do, this does not matter. The Plonsky evidence they read also does not assume that we code the AI to be moral. It says that machine learning systems that are just fed data in the abstract can be racist because they falsely interpret that data. That does not matter for an AI that is coded to try to minimize human suffering. The Weiler evidence indicts, it starts by saying it is hard and then finishes by making an argument. I'll insert this re-highlighting. It's not really re-highlighting. It's just a QNC with a bit more stuff highlighted. It says that it is easily surmountable to overcome these issues and code it into the AI, which they have dropped. The first part of the card is just the question, and the last part is conclusion. I mostly answer the Ward and the Samuels evidence above, but it's a red fox. All of our sources are experts. The Wainwright evidence is from now the AI not smart argument. The Wainwright evidence is from 2018. It is wrong. It asserts humans can learn unlimited patterns and analyze unlimited data. This is facially incorrect. They've talked about it in cross-text, but the 1 AR drops the Seatra evidence we read in the 2NC, which indicates that AI in the status quo is superior superior to human intelligence. It can analyze large, complex problems by coalescing massive data sets that humans are not even close to smart enough to comprehend because of the cognitive limitations of brain science. It says that politics is complex and involves many considerations of different sort of consequences that we cannot understand. Only AI can do that. AI is the only way to do this. The argument in the Wainwright evidence is about AGI broadly. They've conceded out of the 2NC that we don't need to when AGI or superintelligence happens, just AI that can analyze bigger data sets, and that is sufficient to create a process for consulting the AI when it gets smart enough that it is a super intelligence, which doesn't really matter that much. The humans will always be more smart than AI card is the Wainwright thing. I answered that above. The internal benefit, no spillover stuff. The yes, spillover, I only need to win a risk if I win the answers to the deficits because they've dropped that extinction is inevitable absent AI-based governance, which is the 1NC evidence. They say our evidence is about climate. No, the Boston evidence says applying it to localized issues is sufficient to spill over. It's not word salad. You should read it. It says that applying it to local issues creates a broad buy-in because we perceive that it creates better policies. The 1NC evidence says it creates a routinized process that is sufficient to spill over broadly, even if we can win only on it making better policies than the AF. The permutation, however, fails because it does not ask the AI genuinely. It does US human policies and does not create that routinized process. Framing sheet. Your case page. The F is circumvented. No one has read evidence that says federal sentencing guidelines are applied to state courts. They said in the 2AC that says this does not say that. You should read it after the debate. Means they only solve 95% of people who are incarcerated in the status quo because 95% of people are in state courts. Lowers the threshold for deficit because the F barely solves. The F solves a minimal amount of violence. The evidence they said doesn't say that. I did that above. The sentencing decisions are not sentencing guidelines are not mandatory. They dropped the 2NC evidence that says they're discretionary after US v. Booker in 2005, which means that judges do not have to follow the F's guidelines. Rehabilitative justice is a made-up term they do not have a definition of, and no evidence says it's a legal term the judges know about, so they'll just be equally transphobic. They have no evidence that they are not, and the counterplan obviates is framing. They've dropped 500 trillion future lives outweigh their offense. They we are not. This is not sexist to say because we do not think that people should be forced to reproduce. That would obviously minimize utility. Utilitarianism is best because it's egalitarian and values all lives equally, which is prerequisite to any moral system. To the efficacy of any moral system, they've dropped any alternative tautological because it relies on intuitive moral values to predetermine the value of the moral system, which is not how logic works. So they've dropped that risk equals probability times magnitude, which is how math works, which is a D rule, and they've dropped the cognitive bias goes neg. The Weiner evidence says you've never experienced existential risk, so you underestimate them. You massively underestimate them. Probability first is solved by multiplying the two together. The other stuff is relevant because of counterplan.
606 left.
Are people gonna want a card doc?
Yes.
Okay, I'm good to go. Okay, the order is case framing counterplan. Okay, is anyone not ready? All right. We solve circumvention. We're the only ones reading courts that say sentencing guidelines are anchored in the law, so other courts are guaranteed to follow on. This is especially true when they're reading no evidence that actually makes a predictive claim about circumvention. SCOTUS justices conclude that the guidelines have the force of law. They also conceded on the Roberts test that the claim will result in federal court cases that establishes a textual precedent that state courts will refer to when litigating later on. Independently, they conceded that doing the plan for only federal prisoners is still a good idea that solves a major amount of structural violence. The next argument is that guidelines are binding. The work I did above proves this argument has zero implications, even if they are not explicitly codified in law. Everyone follows them in fear of lawsuits and litigation ensures that trial judges will comply. That's the KULOC evidence. The final argument is the stuff about rehabilitative justice is not a made-up term. Our advocate directly says a rehabilitative model, which is literally sending inmates back into society instead of sentencing them. Even if it's not a legal term of art, it's a clear part of the sentencing process that judges understand, and there's no impact to it not being a legal term if they win, then it is. On framing outweighs any risk of their offense. Obsession with future generations creates harmful rhetoric that necessarily privileges the straight white male. They say utilitarianism values all lives because equally, but the Colebrook evidence directly indicts this logic. Their utilitarian calculus views women as being reproducible agents, which serves as a justification for sexual assault and is derived from dominant Western understanding that limits female advocacy in the face of threats and biases policy making towards a straight white male. Our framing is particularly true in the context of this debate. Obsession with using racist AI while delaying reform to the app is the exact weighting politics that our evidence critiques. They don't even have an external impact that's clear in the twin R bet. Their larger trades off with addressing structural balance now. Obsession with future generations necessarily creates a divide between those whose lives are worth living. Utilitarian logic is violent, and only the values normative and intelligent bodies who can reproduce in the future, which necessarily excludes disabled and transgender individuals, and is a reason to reject the counterplan. Perm do both solves all of on the counterplan. Perm do both solves all of their offensive mechanism of the perm is super straightforward and was really poorly answered throughout the debate. The sentencing commission will implement the affirmative, then policymakers and those on the USIC will ask AI to make further recommendations. Our framing of the counterplan is that we need to reframe policy problems. The perm does that net better because we can implement the app and make adjustments based on judgment from AI and people. This is super important, especially in a world in which we're winning that AI do not have moral compasses and humans will always be smarter. There is no reason the perm doesn't solve, and there are no words for mutual exclusivity coming out of the 2-1R. The perm is the only option. Their only answer to the perm in the 2-1R was super blippy and honestly incoherent. I think they said that the perm wouldn't be binding and wouldn't adhere to the recommendations of the AI. I don't know why that's true, but perm do both mandates of counterplan and AF are done. We don't sever out of either, meaning that recommendations from people in AI in the world of the perm would be adhered to. Functionally, no answer to the perm in the 2AR makes this a ridiculously easy affirmative ballot. It's game over when the 2AR just blows off the perm. They have no impacted out deficit to it and no reason why legal ambiguity undermines solvency for the internal net benefit. Read the Boston evidence in the 2NC after debate. It is gibberish and it establishes zero warrant for mutual exclusivity. And if we win any risk that AI is racist and likely to have more bias than humans, then vote AF. There's two warrants here. First, it's a massive deficit to the case because it proves AI will create rules that are bad for transgender inmates and cause them to experience net more violence. AI is programmed with human bias and often inflates that bias to create even more strict sentences. Generations of studies show that AI views white people positively and black people negatively. Black transgender people are always disproportionately affected by the criminal justice system. There's only a risk that the AF inflates those disparities via allowing racist machines to make decisions over the AF. Voting on the perm or just the AF means there's 100% risk that you're solving a massive instance of structural violence, but voting on the counterplan means there's only a risk that AI will reject the AF or create modifications to the plan that ensures transphobic bias continues. I'll line by line all of their responses to this deficit. First, they say that AI is coded with morals. We did not concede this argument. Madeline recut their evidence, which says that more research is necessary and that humans are unethical, which also implicates AI. Even if the author's overall conclusion is that AI would work, we are still winning the thesis level claim that AI is not ready to be applied yet and that human bias spills over to AI. So even if we try to program it with morals, it still gets imbued with bias frameworks. And second, they say humans are racist. This is just another reason to vote off because only fiating the AF is able to ensure that judges will cannot continue to be biased toward black transgender defendants now. Independently, the 1AR evidence says that AI is even more racist than humans because they inflate biases. Third, they say our evidence is about risk assessment, but this is literally the code that is used to program AI in the criminal justice context. These cards also just provide an example for us. And second, winning that AI is racist means the internal net benefit is zeroed out because we shouldn't trust AI to make decisions in any realm. That links to all of our framing offense. If AI has systemic bias against racial minorities, that will spill over to other forums. Even if they win a risk that AI makes good decisions in the context of the app, it won't in future instances because of incorrect racist views, which means we shouldn't try to shift towards robocracy or integrate AI policy into policy making in the first place. Humans are smarter than AI, which zeroes out the internal net benefit. This card was functionally conceded succeeded in studies of psychological reasons why humans will always be smarter than artificial intelligence. The Wainwright card and the 1AR proves that people are extrapolating unrealistic expectations from AI. The ELIZA effect causes people to have high hopes about the potential successes of AI because there was a computer executing simple program logic in the 1990s, and the people interacting with the computer ascribed emotional intelligence and empathy to its replies. This phenomenon has had a ripple effect and has caused people to believe that AI could perform human function or have a moral compass, etc., which is exhibited by the counterplane. It's just untrue. Wainwright also proves that AI can only match patterns they have already learned, and that the extent of their intelligence, which obviously proves the counterplane doesn't solve. But the card also states that humans can learn unlimited patterns and can select the pattern or solution we need in order to resolve any situation, which is further justification for the perm and a net benefit to it. The extinction arguments at the top of the 200 may have sounded persuasive, but there's a few issues with the internal net benefit. First, they have no specifically explained terminal impact, whereas we have a clear scenario for structural events. They didn't explain the scenario for great power war or how it would lead to extinction, who's involved in it, or the time frame, etc. Second, if we win, humans are better and AI is racist, we shouldn't try to shift towards a world of democracy because humans would solve the impact anyway, and AI is not key. At the end of the day, with the perm solve the entire AF and the internal net benefit, but winning the AI as racist means you reject the counterplan regardless. Good round.
Wait.
Good debate.
The neg doc is sent.
The AF card doc should be sent.
Okay, we're all in. Is everyone here who needs to be here? Looks like it. Okay, really good debate. Everyone should be super proud of themselves for making it here, sticking with debate in this crazy year, and putting a lot of work in. I've judged all of you a couple of times, and I've always really enjoyed it. And you all should be proud for making it here. With that said, the decision is a 3-0 for the affirmative. So Samir, I know you're a senior. I actually don't know whether both of you are seniors. So, you know, I've judged y'all a couple times, and I think y'all are awesome. Always reading like super funny and inventive stuff. It's really up to you whether you want to hear decisions from us. Is that a yes, like yes decision? Okay. So I voted off on the perm. I thought this debate was very close because I think the neg was ahead on virtually everything else. But what it really comes down to is there is not a single card that says that listening to the recommendations of the AI and implementing them in a genuine or binding way is necessary. And I also think the 1AR and 2AR, on top of this, articulating the perm in a clever way that circumvents any neg answers or spin you put on this, because they're describing the permutation as do the AF and then soliciting further input from the AI for like further recommendations. And I think this could have even received a bit more airtime for the AF. Like the plan text says, at least including XYZ. So the AI could just offer more suggestions or creative ways to implement further guidelines, etc. But even without that further explanation, it makes intuitive sense to me, and it is consistent with both the 1AR and the 2AR. And the 2AR even recognizes that this is right. And I think you kind of know this by saying like they're describing the perm now as like do the AF. And then the counter plan, maybe you want some sort of intrinsicness argument here, or some sort of like application of competition arguments, but there isn't really one. And yeah, like I said, I agree with the AF that this Boston card is mostly gibberish. It doesn't say that solutions need to be tailored to specific, or it says that solutions need to be tailored and specific, and that generic approaches are unlikely to gain traction, but I don't think this means the counterplan gains traction in terms of impacting other areas of public policy or why the permutation would be less likely to do so. It's probably more so an argument for why the counterplan solves the AF than an answer to the perm. And I also think the perm would listen to the AI in a binding way again, because we would ask them to make further recommendations basically on the area of the plan, but not necessarily about like its implementation in entirety, if that makes sense. And then the only other thing I think the 200 says is like the perm is flipped if we win AI is smarter than humans. I'm not really sure how that answers or resolves the question of whether the two are mutually exclusive. And I won't really say more than that because I didn't, end up thinking that a lot of any of the rest of the substantive stuff really mattered. But I did think the neg was a bit ahead there.
I can go. Yeah, I thought this was a fantastic debate and really fun debate to judge. Like, congratulations to both teams making it this far, and for finishing the season in this really difficult era of online debate. I don't disagree with anything Nina said, so I won't repeat it. I think that the other remaining potential out for the neg is just winning that AI is less biased than humans. So that would make the counterplan alone preferable to the permutation, because there'd only be a risk of the inclusion of the plan would interfere with whatever the AI recommends. And I ultimately conclude that there is a bit of a solvency deficit in the direction of the AF, just because while I have no qualms about applying super intelligent benevolence coded AI in the abstract to criminal justice policy today, or in the abstract, I do think there'd be significant issues if that were to happen today. Like, I think the best neg cards on this question are the Weiler evidence, which speaks to the potential for AI to attain higher ethical truth, and the Reinhardt evidence, which is about optimism in future tech developments and is also not about AIs. So I think if the federal government were to code a benevolent AI today and subject the AF to it, there'd be a significant risk of biased data sets and poorly designed ethical frameworks that magnify or at least can't ameliorate as effectively violence against transgender inmates. I did think about applying like some of the competition arguments or like something that could be potentially leveraged against permutation do both. The problem is that there's just not really pushback to the AF's specific extrapolation of the perm, which I think even if perm do both in the abstract didn't resolve the net benefit, I think the articulation of the perm, which is basically to implement the plan's guidelines first and then vest AI with authority to make modifications to those guidelines, is able to capture the vast majority of your offense. I think you could say that it's intrinsic because it adds an element of delay, like some of the counterplan debating that was happening earlier, or you could cross-apply the argument from the perm do the counterplan debate that would contend it would sever out of the policy implementation of the plan by allowing details to be amended later. But since none of that was in the 2NR as debated out, I just think that the permutation is able to capture most, if not all, of the internal net benefit to the counterplan.
Don't diverge much. Line by line, Tyler Little. I don't think that AI good bad is that relevant because the AI would just modify the implementation of the AF to be like less biased, racist, transphobic, etc. over time anyway in the explanation of the perm. And then maybe the neg could win a risk that the AI recognizes that the AF hurts trans people or is racist and then say no. But the 2NR definitely isn't presuming that's possible because 2NR begins with like counterplan solves the AF definitively, doesn't really hint that the AF would be that bad aside from some modifications that could be made to it. Retweet the explanations of the perm. 2NR doesn't cross-apply definitions, which I thought maybe could have gotten the job done. Doesn't say that the 1AR articulation is new. Doesn't make a linear solvency deficit that's like AI is relegated to make minor modifications like the paint job of the policy rather than like big policies. And existential risk mitigation is maybe a big policy, like just something like some kind of linear deficit so that you can just go for extinction outweighs. That'd be a lot more helpful. I looked for a card and just like couldn't find a card. I don't know if it's like quite gibberish. Maybe it is gibberish, but it's the perm card is a solvency advocate for the counterplan, but not really a DA to the perm, is the most favorable interpretation of the cards. And so not much to hang my hat on there. Not really key even why genuine consultation is that necessary, other than the 2NR's kind of intuitive claim, since I don't think that the neg reads a card that says genuine consultation is key. So like that deficit isn't zeroed by the fact that there's no card, but it's not that persuasive in general. Side note, the neg advances the claim that only utilitarianism can account for existential risks that are bad because they prevent like the ultimate moral tragedy. You got to break a few eggs to make an omelet, let some humans suffer and die, maybe to solve extinction and stuff. Then the counterplan fiats that the AI is deontological. It will never prioritize one life over another to avoid directly harming someone. Seems like the counterplan just literally causes extinction. If the neg is right about the framing page. 1AR probably could have pointed that out new, and I would have been compelled. It's kind of a hard thing to realize, and so no heat on the 1AR for not pointing that out, but just thought that was interesting.
Thanks for judging. Good luck, y'all.
Thank you. Good debate, y'all.
Thank you all for judging.
Thank you. Good round.
Good debate. Good luck.